This is an Academy Award for Science and Engineering. I know what you're asking. You're asking, how did you get an Academy Award? How did you get an Oscar? Well, the answer is quite simple. I inherited it. This was my grandfather's. My grandfather actually won this award. The story of how I got it isn't near as interesting as the story of how he won it. So, I'm gonna share that with you today. A couple weeks ago, my grandfather passed away, and it's been difficult. It's been difficult. You know, now that I've lost him, I realize there's so many things I wish I would have asked him. I decided to sit down with my dad and ask the questions that I wish I would have been more clear on before he passed. I called my dad and made fun of him for not being able to figure out his device. And then what happened was I recorded 5 minutes where I didn't know how to use my device. So the irony is not lost on me, but now I think I've actually got my dad recorded here. Hi, Dad.
Hello. And hello, YouTube.
Some of the questions that I asked you was, what was it like with Big Bill as a dad?
Yeah, well, it was never a dull moment. He always had some scheme or some plan to redo something that it was done in a poor way and do it better than anybody else. Everything from rocket motors and cars till he designed his own stacking milk crates.
Stacking milk crates? That makes me understand now where I get my compulsive need to solve weird problems.
Yeah. He just got an idea. He got these wacky ideas. He designed a
Hi, Mom.
Hi.
We're filming here, lady.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes.
The biggest thing I think my grandfather gave me was his ambition and drive.
The time that he lit off a rocket motor in the back of our yard, and about 100 kids came from the neighborhood on their bikes to find out where that big noise came from. It was always exciting.
My grandfather had done so many really cool things. For one, he built the fastest car in the world for an extended period of time, breaking the sound barrier. So how old were you when he was working on the rocket car?
Well, anywhere from, he started it in, say, like 76, so that would make me 14. And when he finished it and broke the record, I was 17.
Okay, wow.
It was in 79.
That's about the length that you were working on the pool. From when I was 14 to 17, we were building that pool in the backyard. So the rocket car, Budweiser funded that? How did that even happen? You know what I mean?
He had a guy that had a silver tongue and would go around to different companies and solicit sponsors. Anywhere from Champion spark plugs, which were the igniters for the rocket engine, to Nissan, who provided cars. Suzuki provided motorcycles. All sorts of stuff.
My grandfather was always so generous, even when times were really, really difficult. So it seems like it took like 3 or 4 years to get this done. At that time, when you guys were being sponsored, was money tight? Was it difficult?
Yeah, I only had one pair of shoes growing up. So, now I'm obsessed with shoes, but I got like 20 pairs because the stuff I had to go through as a kid.
It's interesting because so many people can assume from the outside that, accomplishing all of these crazy things, like you're just sitting in buckets and buckets of wealth. But from what I understand, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all.
My dad was pursuing his dreams, sometimes at the detriment of our finances. But, that's the way it was.
I'm assuming that was pretty difficult with trying to make this whole thing happen in a certain period of time, because if it didn't happen, like what were the consequences of it not happening?
You lost your sponsors if it didn't happen. Typically, most race cars are trying to compete in, like, say, the Indy 500. If you don't make it in time, you lose everything.
Yeah.
So, and in this case, we were trying to meet our goals to do that year, and if we didn't wait and start raining, it'd have to come back next year.
My grandfather was a key component in my success as a businessman and entrepreneur. I think there were so many opportunities that he gave me when I would just go to work for him in his yard or doing things around his house, and he was just paying me an inordinate amount of money to do these things. And with that money, I was able to save it and actually invest in my business and my future. And without that, it's hard to say that any of the things that I've done would have ever come to fruition, any of my dreams. But I'll never forget that. With the rocket car then, he was building that at your house.
Yeah, we had a large shop in our backyard. It was quite large, so we had welders and lathe and grinders and a place for the car.
There's this picture I remember he had up that was just this picture, this image of a rocket engine on the driveway. He literally designed it and built it in his yard. Crazy thing. What did neighbors think when you're working on rocket engines in the driveway?
I'm sure they thought we were nuts. I mean, that's obvious.
You're on the salt flats, and this car is about to start going. Were you at all ever worried that this thing would just explode?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's it was high pressure. The tank was kind of an integral construction to the outside of the body.
Yeah.
So the tank was it was a big thin tube. And in that tank was hydrogen peroxide at 90%, which is not, I don't know, what do you get in the store, 3 or 4% or whatever it is. That was in the front, and the backside it had a pressure tank. Mm-hmm. So that pressure tank was super high pressure and it was all welded together. Yeah. So there's always a possibility that the tank could break.
So when he built this rocket car and it went off, it hit 740 miles an hour.
Yeah, 730.
And it broke the sound barrier. After that, what do you guys do? Did you celebrate?
We celebrated, obviously. I mean, it was a big deal, but then, obviously it's kind of a letdown after you accomplish your goal. So you go back and figure out where you go from there. I'm not sure my dad had a huge plan after that. Mm-hmm. Probably took a month off to, figure things out, put things away. And, then you got to get back to the business of making a living.
Yeah.
So,
the bigger reason, though, is why did he make this? It was just something that he wanted to do? It was just a passion?
Yeah, I think that from his when he was young, he had an idea that he wanted to build, the fastest car in the world. And when he was about maybe 22, he built a car called the Valkyrie jet car. He was 22 years old, and he built that. He was unable to run at Speed Week in Bonneville at the time because nobody had ever seen a jet car before. Yeah. It was we can't allow that thing here. It'll kill somebody or whatever. So
where did he learn how to do all this?
He was primarily self-taught. I mean, he talked to people, he read books, he learned all this stuff on his own. And back then, people probably don't have an appreciation for that as much as they do now because there was no internet.
He had to read books.
Yeah, he had to go to the library, which, a lot of these kids watching, I'm sure, haven't been in a library in years. And,
I haven't been to a library in a decade.
You can download any book off your Kindle or Audible or whatever. Yeah. I want a sponsorship for Audible, but after I said that.
You want a sponsorship for
I'm
Audible?
Expecting a check.
Most of my family, which all of you guys are probably aware of, we inherited his sense of humor. He was the dad joke champion. Earlier you said that he was the king of dad jokes.
Yeah.
Here's a story that I said about that. Because I recorded my side. One time, Joey and I had tadpoles, and we came home from school one day, and they were mini frogs, literally frogs half the size of the tadpoles. This is when he was babysitting us for a week, and we were like, how did this happen? This is crazy. We were supposed to see the evolution of them. Literally the next day we come back, and they're tadpoles again, but different tadpoles. I'm 30 now, and I'm really curious what he did with all those tadpoles and frogs. There's so many just silly moments and fun times that we had together that I'll never forget. What came first, the Oscar or the rocket car?
Is that a dad joke?
No.
The chicken and the egg? No? Okay. The Oscar came after the rocket car. He completed the rocket car and broke the speed of sound with the rocket car.
Broke the speed of
And then he went into the movie business, basically making camera cars, cranes, and filming equipment. As a result of making that filming equipment, he got an Oscar, a technical Oscar, for the Shopmaker camera cars. They're still in use today, actually.
This camera car, was this the first of its kind, or did camera cars exist back then?
Well, camera cars existed back then. And back then, people did a lot more filming. They didn't have the computer-aided graphics that we have now. But back then, you had to tow a car. When people were driving a car, you had to tow it, put the camera on the car, and things of that nature. So what he did on the first camera car that he made made it a lot more modular and things. On the second camera car that he made, which was called the Shopmaker Elite, It had electric motors so it could drive silently. It had a battery pack to power the lights. It had 3 steering axles so you could drive sideways down the street.
That's crazy.
So
I bet that was a hot ticket item when he first made those.
yeah, they are. They still use them today.
You know, growing up, there was always this big shadow I was living into. And it was always like, hey, do something worthwhile, do something meaningful, because here's proof that you can do something meaningful. Here's proof that you can change the world. Here's proof that your dreams are possible. And so he worked on a bunch of different projects that led up to the one he got an Oscar for, right? Which was True Lies.
Well, no, he actually got a technical Oscar for the camera cars themselves. No, the True Lies thing came after that.
What was the True Lies thing?
It was an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie with Jamie Lee Curtis inside a car where she was sticking out the
top
sunroof.
Yeah,
the sunroof. And, a helicopter comes by and grabs her, and the car goes off the bridge, which is really high, going like 80 miles an hour. What we did is we made that vehicle, you didn't want to crash somebody with that because they'd be dead.
Yeah.
So we made that vehicle remote control. So it was basically just a giant remote control car where my dad sat on the camera car, in the front of the camera car, and drove the car from behind. And, the car went off the bridge and he was driving it off the bridge.
That's crazy.
And I happened to, I was working as an engineer at Disney at the time. I put all that equipment in the car. I did all the fabrication and everything, putting the equipment in the car.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was, I made a little extra money so I could buy you some shoes.
And so the Oscar that he got was for that Shotmaker car.
Yeah, it was for the car itself and the Shotmaker Elite camera car that he made, which was so innovative and so new to the movie business at the time.
That's really cool. And so he got an Oscar for science and engineering.
Right, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's you don't get the big statue with that one. You get the a little smaller statue.
I think the really cool thing growing up with a grandfather that accomplished so much is that it really helped me realize what's possible with persistence, determination, and a vision. And I'll never forget that. And I think he played such an impactful role in my life, in all of the crazy things that he's done, in just showing me, hey, listen, you have a vision, make it happen. You have an imagination, put it to use. It's really tough losing my grandfather because, I don't know, I feel like there were missed opportunities that I could have stepped in. That's a lesson that I'll take away, and a lesson that I won't learn the hard way again, but I just want to make sure I don't forget all the good that he's done for me and my family and just our entire generation. Dad, thank you very much for joining me and sharing all these stories. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Oh no, my goodness, I could go on for hours and hours. It's just, I miss my dad, and
Yeah.
it's a tough thing to have,
It is.
have him pass away. So
Yeah, it is. Well,
I don't want to leave everybody on an unhappy note, but he accomplished a lot of stuff in his life and made the world a better place in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so. And he contributed to our family in amazing ways too, and was always pretty generous. So
Yeah, definitely.
that was always amazing. Well, anyways, Dad, thanks. I love you.
Okay. Love you, buddy.
Thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate you. If there's someone in your life that maybe you feel like you should reach out to, do it. If there's someone in your life that's helped you get where you are today, reach out and thank them. Thanks for watching.